Hello, welcome to the Go Beyond Disruption podcast. Thank you so much for making us part of your week, and what a week it's been. For individuals, for families, for communities, for businesses, and well, for everyone. And with almost everything changing almost everywhere, one of the many things that teams around the world are focused on right now is understanding and coping with the impact that the coronavirus has had on our businesses today, right where we are, in our own communities. So that's what we've been talking about here in this, the first of 3 special episodes exploring how to manage the local impact of a global disruption. Welcome to episode 103 of the Go Beyond Disruption podcast. It's brought to you by the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants, the unified voice of the AICPA and Thieme. From the online media team, I'm Kyle Hannon, based out of the UK office of the association. Every week here on the podcast, we've been bringing you insights from inside the accounting and finance profession to help you stay ahead of the curve, whatever business you're in. And that's just what we've been exploring over the last week in a series of live streamed webcast Q&As, each one with a panel of accounting and finance experts from a different part of the world. And if you missed them when they went out live, here's your opportunity to listen in. In this recording from last Thursday's video session, March 27th, you'll hear a US regional perspective. I was joined by 4 panelists from New York, Bourke, from Maryland, Thieme, from Louisiana, Nettleton, and from California, Neeti Mehta. We took questions via email and also during the live chat. Now, the sound quality is a little scratchy, but that's no surprise because there's an awful lot of people using the internet all of a sudden. So let's get started with that conversation.
Welcome to all of you watching this live stream via the AICPA Facebook page at facebook.com/AICPA. As I said, this is the series of AICPA and Thieme coronavirus-related webcasts. Our panel take your questions, live Q&A. You can put those in the Facebook comments below this video window. We're talking about the impact the coronavirus has had on your business, and we'll be doing this for the next 60 minutes, giving you a regional perspective on how it's impacting business around the world. From New York, Bourke, from Maryland, Thieme, from New Orleans in Louisiana, Nettleton, and from California, Neeti Mehta. And as you can tell from their locations, it's pretty clear that this webcast will focus on the US. Now, as I said, questions can be submitted at any time during the session. You can use the comments here on the Facebook page. And if you can tell us something about yourself, even if it's just your location, what city are you in, then we'd love to know, just so we have a bit of context when we answer the questions. So let's have a look at our situation. As you can tell, we're all not at the office, but work has continued. As I said, I'm normally based in the heart of the financial district in the City of London. The building's there, but like so many of us, we are here, which for me is fine because I'm joined by a group of people who I think are really worth spending time with. As I said, from Greater New York, Bourke. Jim, tell us a little bit about you and where you work and what you do.
So thank you, Kyle. So I work actually the center of the universe. I work in New York City in Times Square. That's where I normally am on a day like today. However, I am actually about 2 hours away in New Jersey, working out of my home office. I don't get to see this place too often, so I'm getting used to it. And it's been pretty good lately. So and we'll talk more about what we're actually getting done in this place.
Super. Thanks for joining us. From Maryland, Thieme. Robin, how's your day? What would it normally be like? And where are you now?
Hi, Kyle. I'm coming to you from Kensington, Maryland. We're right outside Washington, D.C., and we are not yet as affected as New York City is from the virus. So while we're all working from home, there's many elements of our day that have not been as disrupted as other places in the country.
Yeah.
The big thing is that we're all working remotely now. For KBS CFO, that's our normal operation. So in that particular perspective, it's not that different than the average day.
You're the CEO of KBA CFO, aren't you?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the things I didn't mention was that Jim is a partner and member of the board of directors and management committee at Withams, a firm that many of us have heard of.
Mm-hmm.
Now, from a city that most of us will have heard of for all sorts of reasons, obviously, great jazz. From New Orleans, Les Nettleton. Les, you work in information for a company that sound almost like they should be a boutique rather than an accounting firm. Tell us about you and where you work.
Well, I'm Les Nettleton, Director of Information Technology Services for Bourgeois Bennett CPAs and Consultants. The Bourgeois Bennett has a French sound to it, but that's because we're located in Southeast Louisiana. I've been with Bourgeois Bennett for 37 years now. We're a 97-year-old firm, basically based in New Orleans with 4 offices in Southeast Louisiana. We have a staff of 85, very traditional firm, A&A department, tax department, litigation consulting department. Our client base is mostly small businesses. We do have some larger businesses, but we're a mom and pop type CPA firm. Normally we work from my office, which is about 5 miles away, but now I'm here working from home. Been working from home for probably about 7 days now. Our offices closed down on Monday, so all of our staff now are working from home. Day 3, going successful so far.
Good to have you along, Les. And Neeti Mehta is co-founder of a company called Automation Anywhere. Neeti, we have, like many of our guests, spoken before. You've been a guest on the Go Beyond Disruption podcast, which we make for the association. And you've got quite a spread of interests in the work that you do. Tell us a little bit about what you would normally be doing and how that's changed for you right now.
Some things have changed and some things haven't, just like for all of us. We're trying to keep, obviously, our customers and partners happy, in this time of craziness, really. And like others, we're working from home. I have 3 children. So managing 3 children at home while 2 adults work is quite an experience. I'm sure we'll be better for it in the long run. But it's been a crazy time. And actually work has been one of those things that I think has helped us stay grounded as well. So it's a kind of a mixed blessing in a way, even though it's trying times, and we hope we get out of it really fast.
And I'll come back to you with a question about what, instead of what's changed, what's been disrupted, I'll be asking you in a minute or two, what have you been able to keep up with? What's continued? But the last member of our team, I'd just like to bring in briefly my colleague from the London office, Anastasia Stefanidou, who is overseeing the live stream. She's helping us to moderate the Facebook page and collecting questions. Now, Anastasia is not going to be part of the main presentation, but she will be turning up every now and then as she gets questions come in. But Anastasia, you're on the video feed, so tell us a little bit about what you would normally be doing for the ARCPA and CIMA.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anastasia. I'm based in London at the moment, and I work for our communications team. So I'm responsible for this side of our, social media and live streams. So I'll be, here with you guys to check if any of our attendees have any questions, and I'll be passing them to you.
Thank you very much. Right, let's go back to Neeti. Neeti, we were talking about how these are definitely trying times. They are disrupted times. And every time I see a post online or hear someone on the radio say that, it's at times like these that we remember that. And you just have to actually stop yourself saying that, because there never have been times like these, have there? But with all of these changes, there are some things that we have as businesses been able to keep doing. So let's start with one of those positives. And still, the changes you've had to make and the challenges you've had to face, what are some of the things that you haven't needed to change?
So as I mentioned, the focus on customers and partners, I think, is one of the key aspects of any business. And especially in trying times, I think we really have to come together as a business community, as well as human beings, really, to get past this, to get past this well, and to get past this, hopefully, with as little disruption as possible. We are in the automation business. So in these times, we definitely see some ways that technology can help. And so we try to put our best foot forward in that aspect as well, to bring technology as a solution to some of these problems that we are facing. Literally on the ground solutions, like we are creating those solutions as the problems are evolving, which is great for automation, great for technology, and hopefully really great for getting this pandemic closed out.
Robin Thieme, from the perspective of KBS CFO, what are some of the things that you've been able to just keep doing as the world and as the environment changes around you?
Well, a lot of the regular workday, as we've been able to keep going the way we normally do. We have systems set up to keep track of our work and communicate with one another through Slack, and we keep track of our work in a tool called Asana, and we communicate, digitally. We're all set up with a Zoom similar Zoom interface to what we're using today. So many elements we can keep going. What is difficult is while people were, encouraged to work remotely from day one when I started the business, that the plan wasn't that then there would be 6 or 7 other people around them while they were working. So in the one, the big change isn't necessarily the technology or the tools that we're using, but more the personal side of it, of having the reality of, as Neeti was saying, if you have young children at home and you're on a call like today, that your child might not necessarily, view that as the most important thing going on right then. So we've been having challenges with competing priorities and home challenges, home stresses. There's just a reality. We have parents where the kids were going to graduate from high school and go to a prom, and those kids can't do that. That's important to them. Things like that are more what, managing how people are reacting is what is different, and the tools we're using are somewhat similar.
Exactly. We can't avoid the impact, because to bring work home has never meant as much as it does right now. Jim Bourke, from the center of the universe to 2 hours away, I'm quite sure you've found a way to make sure that things keep ticking over. What have you been able to keep up with the easiest?
Well, we're keeping up with everything. I want to be totally honest with you. So, we think about this. Our profession has been migrating to the cloud for the last 10 years, right? I've been traveling around the globe trying to preach that to every firm. And so now is reality. Reality is hit. It's sad that it took this to change our mindset, but I will tell you, we're getting stuff done, right? We have 1,500 staff throughout the United States. And no matter where they may be today, I will tell you a significant number of them are not in the office today, but they are getting stuff done. I am actually blown away at how productive my staff are by working from home. And it's really attributable to firms that are viewing technology as a strategic asset, and no more strategic asset today than ever before. We're seeing that. So it's those investments we've made in technology, whether it's Office 365, migration to the cloud, Microsoft Teams, technologies like that, they're all playing a role in allowing us to function as a firm today.
And as you say, it's a blend of the technology and the people applying it. There's mindset, there's passion, and there's professionalism. And a blend of those with, I think, the right attitude behind it all make stuff happen, or continue to happen when everything seems to make it more of a challenge than usual. And we have to think about what makes that possible. And this is my question to Les Nettleton. Les, what do you think you've been able to keep up with the easiest since you started working from home? What has been the continued focus of your work? Has it been customers? Has it been provision of services? Has it been the provision of reassurance? What have you been able to just keep up with the easiest?
Well, a governor declared a mandatory stay-at-home order this past Monday, and it went into effect. So nobody's actually able to work from our offices. So our entire staff is working from home right now. So right now, as Director of Information Technology, I'm really scrambling to make sure that everybody's up and running and being profitable. I can tell you on Monday, I received just back and forth inter-office communications via email, 241 emails. I thought, well, that's a record. And then yesterday, I received 312 emails, inter-office communications. So our communications are really working well. I think it's a matter of, like Jim said, our technological systems, our workflow systems, our manual systems, they're basically all up and running optimally. The locations where we're working is different. But remember, auditors are very used to this type of environment. Auditors are usually out of the office anyway. So an auditor working from their house isn't that much different. From a New Orleans standpoint, we've been kind of called the epicenter now of the virus. Next to New York, we're one of the places that has the highest level of the quickest rise of cases here. But we also live in a hurricane area. So we're kind of already aware of remote issues and really have spent the past few years modifying our systems to be able to facilitate remote access. We have a good flexible business continuity plan. We moved our key operations like Jim did to the cloud. Our hardware, interestingly, is brand new as we replaced all our computers at the end of last year. So really, I'm not really concerned about whether we're going to have hiccups from that standpoint. I think the best thing we have is we have the most amazing staff who are not only extremely intelligent, but very, very flexible to change. And I think that comes from down here. I think the final piece, though, is as director of IT, I have remote capabilities to get onto anybody's computer or any of our servers, so I can do any kind of assistance without having to actually be with them in the office.
Well, we have a question that has been sent through to us, and actually by coincidence, this comes from Louisiana. And this is very similar to many of the questions we do get, which I'm not saying we get 350 a day like you do, but this is one that comes in fairly often, which we're happy to refer to one of our online resources. This is a question from someone in Hammond in Louisiana, and they said the governor has issued a stay-at-home order. Will that make an employee eligible for sick leave? What part of sick pay will an employee get back as tax credit? And more questions like that. And I have to say that the team here, the panel that we have on this live webcast, are not doctors. They're not necessarily people who can answer this immediately, but we do have a website that we can refer you to, and that is aicpa.org/coronavirus. That's aicpa.org/coronavirus. And that is the AICPA's homepage, which takes you to existing coronavirus-related resources, referrals and signposts to other sources of information, mostly focused on the finance and accounting profession. So thanks very much for those questions. And as we get more, we'll look at those. Let's talk about what makes it possible for us to cope with unexpected impacts, or perhaps with expected impacts that are just so much bigger than we'd ever expected. Let's go back to Robin Thieme. Robin, when you look at the people, they are perhaps an organization's most significant resource. What impact have you seen on the people and the way that one works with one's colleagues, suddenly who you don't share office space with, but still you share tasks and purpose with?
Yeah, I want to answer that and build on what Les just was talking about, which he tapped into something that connects with our people, and it sounds like Jim's people and Les's people, is that unlike what people may think of when they think of an accountants, we've become capable change adapters. And, that's a vital part of, for sure, our firm. In fact, when people are hired, I really actually test for their comfort with pivoting and adaptation to change and so forth, because that's just our reality. Now, this is kind of pushing it to the limits here. And one of the things that I'll, kind of share is just the level of uncertainty for both the employees and the clients when I'm speaking to them is really one of the things that they're struggling with the most. I have business owners that are struggling with, kind of in relationship to this legislation that's being, built as we speak. Do they lay people off? Do they wait for the unemployment to kick in? And is that going to be more a better fit for them? Will they, a distillery that's close their doors? Will they be able to recover? And will people, be able to see their products in 3 months? Those are the kinds of things that are causing both my team internally and the clients a lot of stress. So, but being able to adapt to today, we're doing this. They closed their offices in New Orleans. We had to make changes. Monday morning, everyone started to work, and I said, in 2 hours, we're having a team meeting. We're going to start plowing through the legislation to understand it today. So a little bit, I think the biggest thing, Kyle, that's happening on our end is I'm trying to make sure people are comfortable with a little bit of surprise during the day and not surprised by the surprises, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe it. So
that makes good sense.
Yeah, that's where we are.
So let's go back to Jim. When you look at what you can put in place to mitigate impact, what makes it possible for us to continue? Obviously, looking at the people, but perhaps this is a conversation for another time because there's so much we could say. But let's start it now. What has to be in place technologically and systems-wise to be able to make it possible to continue business as unusual?
Yeah. So when I look at this, Kyle, I'm looking at the internet, right? So we are all plugged in around the globe to the internet. The fact that we have that infrastructure there available, the availability of tools, applications. Think about this: Office 365. It's embedded in all of our firms today. Key components of Office 365. I mean, not to make any recommendations for any vendors, but we're all using Excel, Word, right? Teams is a piece of that. Teams is allowing us to communicate with staff in the field, collaborate with our clients. So that's what I would do. I would leverage the internet and leverage that technology and choose those vendors out there that embrace that concept, that deliver to you cloud-based solutions. Quite frankly, that's allowing us to survive today. That's allowing our firm to service our clients. It's allowing our staff to be safe in their homes, work remotely, social distance themselves from everyone else. I mean, just exactly what I'm doing. It's the technology. It's here. It's available. It's here right now. It's right now, Kyle. It's right here.
I just wanted to kind of...
Sorry, Robin, yes?
Yeah, I want to piggyback on what Jim is saying, and maybe you guys have all encountered this. We have the technology. One of the things that once you've got that technology, you have to be clear with your team about how you're going to use the different pieces of technology, because one of the challenges that we have regularly, and it's kind of been accelerated, is the confusion. Do we send an email? Do we use Slack? Do we, use Asana? Do we use this tool? Or, do we pick up the phone? Do we use Zoom? So, we've got a lot of stress, and we've kind of touched on that quite a bit, and we're going to continue to. But with all these tools comes the requirement that as, less probably key part of your role, and maybe Jim's too, is like being clear and consistent with everyone how we're going to use each tool, because it becomes overwhelming for some people.
And I agree. And you know what? The one thing is, it starts with firm leadership. All of us, we are leaders in our firm. And if firm leadership needs to embrace this concept and make sure that message is clear to all your partners and all your staff out there, that this is the platform that we embrace. Let's embrace it. Let's embrace this remote computing process.
Well, I'll throw a question, which I think we'll touch on a little bit later. We are reliant on this technology. We rely on connectivity. But how do we plan for a situation where that connectivity slowly starts to erode if more and more people get online? What is our plan C if this was the plan B? But I think we'll talk about what could happen if the internet goes away. We'll talk about that perhaps a little bit later in this discussion. If you have just joined us, you are watching a live webcast from the AICPA and Thieme. I'm Kyle Hannon, and we are talking about the ways we can manage the local impact of a global disruption. Live questions, live answers, and regional perspectives, this time looking at the US perspective on how the coronavirus is impacting businesses around the world. We talked about the UK on Monday. We are spending today talking about the US perspectives. And I'm joined here by 4 guests from Automation Anywhere: Neeti Mehta, Director of Information Technology for Bourgeois Bennett in New Orleans, Les Nettleton, Maryland-based Robin Thieme of KBS CFO, and from Withams, New York-based Jim Bourke. I'm Kyle Hannon from the AICPA and CIMA in the UK. I'm also joined by my colleague Anastasia Stefanidou in London, who is handling the live stream. Now, we have had a question, and I'd be interested to see who wants to take this one. I love my people. I want to make sure that each member of staff is valued, and they know that, but I've got no more revenue coming in. I'm not going to be able to keep the people. How do I have those difficult conversations? How do I say no to people that I want to keep saying yes to, people that have to know that they're still valued, even if they may not be able to be retained? That's a tough one. Who wants to take that?
Well, I'm game for starting in terms of the reality. Our business is centered around being the accounting department for many businesses. So we're addressing this regularly. So we've got, a number of clients that have had to do mass layoffs, and some clients that I had the conversation that you just relayed from your questioner is like a conversation that was happening on Tuesday with one of the clients. And I think overall, addressing people with dignity and respect and compassion, and making sure they recognize that this is, that they're valued, as you said, is really ultimately allowing them to, know that when they walk away from the company that they've been treated as best as we can. So I think it's, really important when you terminate somebody to make sure the human element is included in it. And I think right now we've got the being sensitive to people being terminated and having to lay them off because of the reality of zero revenue. And then we're ultimately going to be watching to see how the government can, kind of support that. So right now, there's been times, and again, I had this conversation where the employer realized that unemployment would be better for that employee than what that employer could provide.
And Neeti, your global footprint at Automation Anywhere means that there are so many offices, so many contexts, so many different trajectories that the situation is playing out in different parts of your operation globally. How do you balance between what an organization can support versus what it can't? And this may be from your sector rather than from the perspective of Automation Anywhere, but with so many clients, how are you seeing people balance that, helping people understand that they are valued, even though sometimes they may not be able to look at ongoing employment?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, these are extraordinary times. That means we need extraordinary leadership, and we really need extraordinary solutions. And so really thinking outside the box, coming at it from that little, aspect of balancing business needs, balancing employee needs, balancing what is really possible, and balancing what the government or the community at large can bring to that organization to keep them in business, or to keep them, keeping the lights on for a bit longer. Because, unlike other recessions, I think a lot of the problems that we are seeing because of this pandemic is service oriented. And so hopefully we'll come out of it faster too. As soon as businesses are able to start functioning again, unlike other recessions, hopefully it will be much faster to get people back onto their regular jobs. So it's a little bit of sustenance from that point of view as well when we look at the business as a whole. In any industry, this is. I think the leaders, strive to be transparent. They have to kind of balance what is really possible for the business, of course, but also keep in mind that the employees have, that level of uncertainty on a mass scale is also hard. So you have to deal with it, as Robin mentioned, with dignity and empathy, lead with extraordinary leadership really at this point. And industry hopefully will all band together to come up with interim solutions while we, solve for the long term.
I have another submitted question here, and someone asked if we talk about a company that had been planning to finish Q1, Q2, where we in this part of the world reaching, what would be the end of the financial year, and many companies were already planning what they would do after April, perhaps expanding, growing, taking on new staff. Now, what can we say about employment offers that companies may now need to withdraw? How do you handle it when you've got a new employee who was just about to start, they've quit their previous job, and now you can't hire them because you don't have an office to set them up in? What happens in a situation like that? I wasn't expecting this question. No one knew it would arrive, but it has. Who wants to put their hands up and take this one?
So let me run with that, Kyle. So we're addressing that right now. So we make a significant number of offers to interns at our firm. It's a significant, because that internship pool, like most large firms, that's where we pull our future hires from. So as of right now, we are being fairly optimistic. We feel that hopefully we get through this in the short term. We see a lot of our clients in many industries are doing well right now. Construction is allowed to continue. Some of the consumer products areas like groceries, things like that. Healthcare, as terrible as what's going on in the healthcare arena, they are so busy right now dealing with all the trauma and everything. So there are pockets of our economy that are actually thriving in this pandemic, and others that are suffering. So we want to be optimistic on this. We know that this too shall pass. And that is the future of our firm. And those are the future individuals that will be in our profession. So we're not shutting the spigot off yet. We're saying, you know what, if we as owners of our firm need to basically suck it up a little bit, we shall do that. And let's not overreact of what may happen in a few months. So we're being optimistic. We're not shutting anyone out right now. We're saying that is our future. Let's just see how this goes.
Okay. And if we look at the lessons we can learn from what has gone before, one has to keep up one's campaigns, one's strategies. Your goals may need to change. Circumstances certainly have. But ultimately, and this goes back to something that I think all of you touched at the beginning, we all have business continuity plans because we all have the ambitions for that business to continue. We have risk assessments and risk mitigation strategies. And we look at what went before we know how we can plan for what we think is coming up next. But that doesn't always work out. Now, Les Nettleton, let's go to you on this one. You're based in a city that 15 years ago faced total disaster. And for people who haven't heard about that, just tell us what happened and what you think the lessons learned from that could be, and how they'd be relevant for now.
Well, back in August of 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. It was a Monday. Now, the interesting part was on the previous Friday, we knew Katrina was going to hit. We had 3 days to plan for Katrina. This is a little different, though. It kind of gives companies the ability to go ahead and do some planning. But I remember a quote from our managing partner at the time. 80% of New Orleans at that point in time was destroyed. And his quote was, how do you do business when the city you do business in has been destroyed? And I think that you look at that, that's now global. How do people think they're going to be able to continue to do business? The interesting part has to be, somebody just brought it up, the ability to work and think and do things with taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You've got to think outside the box. These are strange times. This is something out of a science fiction novel. So when you start looking at things that you can do going down in the future, just being able to prepare for these type of things, you're not going to be able to prepare. Our business continuity plan, we threw it out after Katrina. It just wasn't working. We went from a 250-page plan down to 10-page plan, but we never even had this idea that everybody would be working remotely. It's interesting because we look at the things that we're doing from the standpoint now. What we did back in Katrina was our firm started to look for ways that we could serve our clients who may not be up and running at that point in time. What are services that we can do for our clients? Right now, we're spending a lot of time reading the regulations and laws that are being passed to assist our clients as their trusted advisories. But this is fluid. Having a good research team is key. I also think that just having people get together, the concept of meetings. I know we have had 100 meetings in the past 2 weeks, different department meetings, and the leadership at our firm is really committed to the concept of meeting and getting everybody's ideas. One of the things that we did during Katrina was, as we're struggling to recover, was we looked at every single idea that somebody had. And we said, okay, let's consider that idea. I don't care how stupid or silly it sounded. We're going to consider the idea. And interestingly, some of the really silly sounding ideas were the ones we ran with. It was really good to see that type of instance happen where we were saying, everybody give us what's happening. Give us your information. Tell us what's going on. What do you think we can do to better work?
And Neeti, you wanted to add something to what Les had to say there, and then I think I'll ask everyone about business planning, because it's interesting to think, okay, if we've got a business plan, what do we throw away? What do we keep? But you wanted to add something to Les's point.
I was actually going to piggyback off of what Les said. Is one of the things we will see is new solutions come to be. Just the fact that we have all this technology. And we know how to use certain aspects of that technology, but we are constantly, like in our business, we've been in automation now for about 16, 17 years. And we, have a lot of solutions. We've worked with tons of companies across the world in different industries. And still, just in the last 3 to 4 weeks, we've seen applications of that automation in such a way that we had never imagined it to be. Bringing together different systems in different ways, bringing data together in real time across, whether it's a government organization or legacy systems or, company databases. And all of this is coming out with solutions that really, not just outside the box, but as Les put it, that you had really never imagined you'd need or had planned for. But they're great solutions, and hopefully they'll leave us with better technology and better applications of that technology after this pandemic.
So I'll ask everyone the question about business plans, because we all know that an important part of every AGM is to go through the plans. What are you planning to do for next year, and how do you avoid or mitigate risk? So suddenly the plans that we have don't really seem to apply for the situation we're in. So I'll go back to Les. If we have a business plan that we put together at the end of 2019, and we're now suddenly looking at it at the end of March 2020 in a totally different world, what are the bits we should keep, and what are the bits we should get rid of? Les, I'll go to you first.
I hope this is a quick answer. You better be able to think on the fly. The things that you have in your business plan right now, we're basically looking at it and saying we want to go ahead and keep it in place as much as we possibly can. We have a good, solid business plan. However, we are of the reality that this is going to change constantly. We're hearing now from the standpoint of New Orleans that, we may be down 3 weeks. Reality states it may be 12 months before we have any kind of fix for this virus. So when you start looking at these things and you're saying, okay, how are we going to handle things? There's really no way you can say, let me set a business plan down right now and lay it out. You've got to be flexible. And I think that's the thing at Bourgeois Bennett, what makes us real strong is our people are real flexible and they don't mind the change as much. Now, for the external businesses with their business plans, that's one of the reasons we're trying to come up to snuff on that and make sure that we can help people. The only thing I can say is from that standpoint is just make sure that you are flexible. It's not going to be the same thing that you had before, especially from the standpoint of what's happening, that this is a global crisis.
Neeti, would you say that's important? Flexibility?
I think flexibility. You can't say it often enough. Absolutely, it's right now a moving situation. We don't know what was true last week is not true today. What's true today is not going to be true next week. Contingency planning, modeling, business do all sorts of things in order to mitigate this, in order to kind of at least plan whatever little they can in order to deal with the situation. But it's both sides of the equation. Businesses have to be that flexible, and so do people. The fact that, again, we don't know what's coming down the pipeline, people really have to be flexible in what they can do for their jobs, what they can bring to their companies. And likewise, companies have to be flexible into how they're going to continue with the business and how they're going to help the employees through this time. So absolutely, I think it's flexibility all the way.
And Jim, you must have some thoughts on that. Business plans from left, right, and center. You work with so many clients. You provide so much advice. Right now, what do we keep? What do we get rid of from those business plans?
Yep, Kyle, I think we can learn a lot from what's happening right now, and it will require modifications to our business plans. Think about the remote concept. Our staff and our client staff, they're working remotely today like they've never done before. That brings into raises other issues like cybersecurity concerns. I mean, as keepers of confidential and private information, our clients trust that we are exercising best practices over that data. So we have to think about this. How will that impact? So we need to make sure that in addition to giving our staff all the right tools, that we also consider those other tools that are necessary to protect that confidential private data. So this is giving rise, this pandemic is giving rise to a change in that thought process on remote computing and buttoning it up a lot tighter than probably we've done in the past.
And Robin, what would you say makes for a 2020 ready business plan?
Well, first of all, I think the framework and the infrastructure used for planning needs to be super flexible. It needs to be a more like streamed down, like a business model canvas, as an example, which is like a table that a visual table where you're just capturing the key elements instead of the old school of, from my perspective, like a document, a Word document or something with a plan. It needs to be much more, the document itself needs to be more of a living, easy to change document. But I think, and people need to be comfortable throwing out the plans. They need to be cognizant and situationally aware. One of the key elements that should be part of every plan is, as kind of corny as it can be, is like what your core focus is, what your core vision is. What those things aren't going to change. They shouldn't change. I guess I'd say that. What's your company culture? Those things. There's certain elements that should be kind of foremost, and then you build based on that what you're going to do next, and not try to wed yourself to something that's just really quickly became not applicable anymore. So those are some of the thoughts I have.
I certainly understand, because if you think about risk mitigation and emergencies, what type of disasters do you plan for? There may be cybersecurity issues, hacks, emergency on site, terrorism, or as Les was talking about, hurricanes, tornadoes, that type of stuff. But something at this scale, this size, and this duration has just never come into any sort of business plan that I have ever seen. I'm not saying that they don't exist, but perhaps we haven't really taken it as seriously as we needed to. We'll be talking about leadership. How do you, as a leader, remotely manage an organization when you can't actually go to the office? We'll be doing that in a minute. Let me just remind you, if you've just joined us on the Facebook stream, I'm Kyle Hannon from the AICPA and CIMA office in the UK. I'm joined by a panel of my colleagues and friends from across the USA, because this is the second of 3 live webcasts that we have been conducting over the course of this week. On Monday, we looked at the UK. We'll be looking at the Far East this coming Monday. But today, as you can probably tell from their locations, and when I say locations, I'm not talking about at their home office. I'm talking about from Greater New York, from Witham, Jim Bourke. I'm talking about Robin Thieme from Maryland, from New Orleans, Les Nettleton, and from Automation Anywhere, based in San Jose, California, Neeti Mehta. They are all in the US, and that, of course, is our perspective today. If you are watching on the Facebook page, facebook.com/AICPA, this is a live stream, and if you have any questions about how to manage the local impact of this global disruption for your business, just pop it in the comments below and we will pass this on. I do have a question about how a small organization can still get the kind of wider scale support that they see so many large scale organizations being able to muster, but I think I'll bring that in a little later. Right now, I want to talk about how one manages to lead remotely. How do you build morale? How do you keep everyone happy, effective, and focused when they're sitting at home in their pajamas? What kind of resources help a distributed team? And I think I'll go back to Les, as a man with his technology hat very firmly on. How do you suggest how a company can manage a distributed team? Are there dashboards you could use? Are there ways that you could just peer into everyone's computer and check that they're all being effective and on task? What are the options?
I think there's a bunch of different ways, just a couple. Number one, we have remote control over all of our people's computers. So at any point in time, I can go onto their computer and if they're having problems, modify them. Also from the standpoint of looking at how our management is handling the situation, making sure the communication is going into there. The issue I look at, though, more from the standpoint of technology, becomes more of a humanistic type thing. I think sometimes we tend to see companies and firms who concentrate on the technology. Let's stay connected. Let's stay together, and lose the humanistic side of what's going on. And I have to put this in as a straight example. Post-Katrina in New Orleans, the suicide rate was 5 times the normal suicide rate. 5 times. People started to, and because this had gone on for months, people just didn't handle it well. One of the suggestions I'm going to make to everybody is, as you're going through this situation, and if it continues to go for a while, monitor your people. Monitor how they feel, what are they doing? Don't just question on how much work are you getting done. Our firm, after Katrina, instituted a confidential hotline for those who are having issues coping with the effects of the disaster. We had meetings, we had counselors come and talk to us as groups about our feelings and things we should be doing. Depression is a serious illness. And boy, we're on the cusp of that right now. I feel my big fear is not how technology is going to be going. It's going to be the people that we're going to care about. And it's not just a CPA firm. This is for everybody. You really need to keep an eye on your people and make sure that you're doing, if they need counseling, that you're offering the counseling for them. I think that was one of the strongest pieces our firm offered us as we came out of Katrina. And I have a good feeling this is going to be happening again this time.
Robin, you've got something to say on the concept of remote CFOs?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to just tap into what Les was saying on just a personal note. When we have an option to allow everybody to kind of go into their holes, so to speak, and just get work done. But I think it's important to make a concerted effort to kind of like over communicate, even with some of our staff can be those that are introverts, but communicating now is really important. And so we're having weekly team meetings, which we're continuing our weekly team meetings, even though I know that at times there's 3 or 4 people standing or near some of my staff, and it's a little bit stressful in a way. But then we start each meeting with a little segue. The lighter side. At times it's the lighter side, and at times it's not. Yesterday's meeting was one thing you're doing to break up your day. So I just had everybody kind of contribute. We heard all kinds of things. Some people said, I'm going crazy, I can't break up my day. And other people talked about their fitness regimen. And so just taking a moment, it's very important to me to turn the clock off, so to speak, and listen.
And Neeti, what are your thoughts there?
So I absolutely agree with them. I think the human element is extremely important. Automation Anywhere, for example, we operate in over 40 countries. Just the fact that you have employees across the globe, probably all of them in some form or fashion are dealing with this problem right now. And so what I do want to say is that managers, whether you manage 2 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, or 5,000 people, it's a question of inclusion. It's a question of making sure every person on that team is part of this communication or part of these social gatherings, even if they're virtual, team meetings, or even, a virtual happy hour with the kids. These are the things that really bring teams together. I think this is how you have to weather such a storm, and you cannot forget or be localized in that sense. If you are a global company, you've got to look at it globally. If you're in one state, you have to look at the entire state, and not forget that it's not because you're not in front of somebody that they don't need that contact.
And Jim, we tie together the people and the technology in the profession every day. We can't do anything without computers. I mean, remember pen and paper. What would you suggest are some ways that leadership can be effective even though it's remote? What are some tools that you would recommend? What have we got at our fingertips?
Oh, we're right here. Look at this. Look at Zoom, right? Look at Facebook. Look at Facebook Live. It's all the technologies. Let's utilize all of those technologies to keep some semblance of normalcy with our staff. I mean, that's what I'm doing. I do. Earlier this week, I did coffee with Jim, right? So I literally sent around a Teams invite. I said, hey, if any of my staff want to join me for lunch, coffee, here, dial in, log in between this period of time. I even see it with my wife. My wife's a real estate agent, but what she did, she goes, Jim, do you know how to use this Zoom? I'm like, yeah, I know how to use Zoom. So she logs into Zoom, and I'm like, why? And I actually walked in on her about a half hour into her Zoom meeting. She was having a happy hour with her friends. So it's like it has really hit home for me is that we are all utilizing. We all could use technology to have some semblance of normalcy in our lives, and not just with our staff, in our personal lives, and also with our clients. Remember, our clients have always believed we are the trusted advisors. They're coming to us. They need our help today more than ever before. If we could simply help guide them down this path, down the path of financing and credits and payroll taxes, because they're all confused about this. So let's utilize all that technology that is right at our fingertips to help them through this process. Be the true leaders that we are in our profession.
And here comes a... Oh, of course, yes.
Can I add something? Another thing we've seen at Automation Anywhere is, as I mentioned to you, we're looking for solutions, right, to help our customers and just the world at large with this. And one of the things that has really worked with this is having cross-functional, cross-geo, cross-country teams come together because they all want to help in some form or fashion to find a solution or to find a solution for a customer who's dealing with it, whether it's WHO or whether it's an organization in China who's trying to get live mapping up so that you can see how the virus is spreading. There are all these solutions, at least from our technology perspective, that we are working on. And because the employees want to band together and want to contribute, you see those teams come together. And that's a great way to use technology to keep that team morale, to keep that team together, and really make them happy in what they're doing right now.
And I have a question about how a small organization, a very small practice, can do the same thing. But we've had a question come in, and this is going to Jim's mention of the fact we all have to remember the professions that we are and the services we're continuing to provide. And quite often we get asked for advice. Now, we do have a question which relates to that. My colleague Anastasia, who has been monitoring the Facebook page, has that question. Anastasia, what is the question you've received?
Yes. So James has asked us if we think that we're going to get extra time to complete 1031 exchanges.
I guess what I would say is, and I'm not a tax accountant, but just from reading what I'm reading, that the IRS is being encouraged to be flexible about the way things are handled. But ultimately, that will probably people from Les's firm and Jim's firm will be at the ready to advise as the legislation becomes more solidified.
Keep checking AICPA.org.
Good point.
Keep checking CIMAglobal.com. For those should be your go-to websites for all these rapidly changing things that are happening.
Excellent point. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that we would say where you need information as things change. The AICPA and CIMA are paying attention and in many cases actually lobbying for the right kind of changes to be made. But as that changes, we've talked about the fact that it continues to change and is fluid in ways that we cannot have imagined even a month ago. You will see those updates on the AICPA.org/coronavirus, online coronavirus resource center, as well as cimaglobal.com/coronavirus. Going back to that question about small enterprises, and then we'll talk about how do we continue to be the professionals we are in this time of disruption. A question we received was, I'm a sole trader, a sole practitioner. I work with a couple of small contractors. How do I get the help that bigger organizations seem to? How do I increase my ability to connect with people? Is it possible for me to still network? Do I need to stay in touch with other small practitioners? How do I, as a micro business, be part of a bigger solution?
So again, we live in a beautifully online world, I guess, at least in these trying times. There are a lot of resources I think you can find online in order to help with that communication. Like you mentioned, the AICPA page and things like that, of course. But there are virtual get-togethers that you can sign up for on Facebook. There are just all these teams of people, I guess, that you can join. So definitely look at that. I think another thing to look at is, from a small business perspective, is what other technology tools can you use, and not just communication tools, but that can help your business and you as a small business owner or a medium-sized business owner, whether they are automation tools, which is the world I come from, of course, or others, so they could be communication tools, they could be HR tools, they could be, tools that the industry at large has in place in order to help small businesses and medium businesses through it. So for Automation Anywhere, for example, we do offer our community edition of our software free for all the small businesses and medium-sized businesses in these trying times in order to make sure that they are able to sustain that business, in whatever capacity we can help. So there's training, there's online, all the online training has been made free in many, many companies, including ours. And these are tools that can not just help you get together through this time of need, but actually maybe grow your business or grow that capacity when we get out of it as well. So it's more a long-term view. And please engage. I think use technology, use these tools that are at your disposal, step outside that box, choose things you've never done before. And hopefully when we come out at the other end, we'll be better off for it.
Yeah.
And I think sorry, Robin, I know we've got a couple of minutes left, so I think we'll explore that point perhaps if we wrap up with our three top tips, because we're almost at the top of the hour. But I just wanted to say that these are points that have come up in our previous webinars. People were also saying, remember the paperwork. Look at ways you can protect yourself with your existing service level agreements, with your existing contracts, with the memorandums of understanding that you have with suppliers or business partners. And have the conversations. There may be things in your insurance policy that you may not have been aware were there, which can help you as a business because you've never needed to look for them, but maybe now you do. And that may have been something that back in New Orleans, you had many people going through insurance policies to see where they were or were not covered. So don't only think that it's down to the technology or the people. There may be something in your existing contract or your paperwork that could help. That is something that has come up before. But I'd like to go to the point that I think all of us have touched on. What does a finance professional need to do now that is different to what went before? So I'll ask each of you this question before we wrap up with the three tips. Let's go to you, Robin, because I know you want to contribute there for a second. What would you say some of the skills or the financial models, the accounting methods that accounting students, accounting professionals may have learned years ago? They've never needed them, but now suddenly they're really relevant. What would you say some of those skills are that need to be suddenly rediscovered and resurrected?
Well, I guess in terms of things that you originally might have put on the back burner educationally, budgeting, planning, forecasting, boning up on your skills of how to pivot financially, building models. Those are great skills that our clients really will benefit from. Just one quick idea.
Okay, Jim Bourke from Witham, what do you think a finance professional needs to do that's different from what went before? What skill do they need to rediscover?
So Kyle, my thing is technology, obviously. So I think what we can do is tweak those technology skills, right? So take those technology skills, hone those technology skills, understand how they can help us to survive during times like this, and also think about ways to monetize that for your firm with your clients. Because if we need that help, our clients definitely need that help as well. So let's help our clients down that technology path as well.
Great suggestion. Neeti Mehta, what would you say we need to rediscover? What are some skills we need to kind of brush off and start really deploying in a new way?
I agree with him. I think at least I come from a technology background, and automation definitely for us is a big push in that sense, because in times of need like this, when you have to pivot so many times, you have to be that flexible. You really need the regular stuff automated so that you can concentrate on those new solutions. And so in my opinion, take that time, automate what you can. I think finance and accounting are one of those areas where automation can help significantly. Training is free. Definitely go check us out. Go check out other companies that do things that can help from a technology perspective and train yourself.
And Les Nettleton, what would you say we as accounting or finance professionals need to really start to deploy in ways we've not deployed in the past?
I think one of the big things that's happening right now is because we have some sense of downtime where you're working in a remote location, you maybe can't get something going. Our managing partner has really pushed CPE right now. Now's the time to start learn anything you can, take all the CPE that you can, and go through our systems and start to do administrative things on your systems. Take it back to the old days where, instead of hoarding emails that you're going through and you're taking this time that you have to clean them out. Self-study is phenomenal, and there's so much of it out there. And that's one of the things that we're trying to identify for our people to be able to do is to go ahead and take this time and do self-study.
Okay, so I think it's time for us to wrap up. 3 top tips from each of you. Let's go Neeti, Jim, Robin, and Les. Neeti Mehta from Automation Anywhere. 3 top tips for people to manage the local impact of this global disruption.
I'll try to keep it short. I think this is a time for people to come together. I think we cannot forget that. So the solutions, the companies, the people, the humans, it doesn't matter how, we all just got to come together, work together at this time. We cannot lose sight of that. That's number 1. Number 2, it's anecdotal, is that in 1665, Cambridge University shut down because of the bubonic plague. And Isaac Newton was basically stuck at home. And that year was considered one of his most innovative years. At trying times, we can come out of it with bigger strides for society, bigger strides for human. And really, we need to kind of focus on that, because 1, it'll keep us sane, of course, but 2, it will bring us out on the other side at a much better spot as humans, much better spot as solutions, much better spot as technology, and much better society. And 3, at these trying times, I think we have to lead with empathy. Always, no matter whether you're dealing with your employees, your customers, even the government, even people who are looking for solutions, and definitely the people at the front lines. So lead with empathy.
Thanks, Neeti. Jim Bourke from Witham in New York.
So Kyle, here's what I would do, playing on some of the original items I talked about. So as we come out of this, and we will all come out of this, all hopefully safe, view technology as a strategic asset. Okay, it is, and you all can see exactly how important it is today. Embrace the cloud. Get out of those legacy in-house based systems. Go to the cloud. There are lots of tools and technologies that can help with privacy and malware and things like that. So embrace the cloud. And most important, encourage and embrace your staff under this remote computing environment. Encourage it and support it 110%.
Thank you, Jim. Robin Thieme from KBS CFO, 3 top tips.
Yep. 1, over communicate. In the remote workforce, it's essential. We're not mind readers. Build structure into your team's day and keep moving physically and in general, and then weave in some compassion and humor into your work day. Those are my 3.
Marvelous. And we'll wrap up with 3 top tips from New Orleans. Les Nettleton, what are your recommendations?
I think first, be flexible. Don't try to lock in on any methods or workflows without being willing to modify. They're going to modify constantly. You really have to be a realist. As a technologist, I have to be both an optimist and a pessimist, looking at both sides. Make sure you're walking down the middle. Look at the optimistic things you can do, but also you got to realize what the pessimistic things you can do. Number 2, I said this before, keep an eye on your people. They are your number 1 resource. I work for a bit larger firm, but it's a family-owned firm. We have that type of feeling. Make sure your people are taken care of. Finally, find the positive in this. Look, there's no commute. You're spending family time together. That could be good or could be bad. While a disruption in normal workflow, is work continuing to be produced? Yes, it is. We are continuing to produce work. For our filing deadline, the IRS has moved it from April 15th to July 15th. So now we're just kind of spreading it out. We're not really losing work around. So stay positive. I've noticed so many people out there just being totally negative about this whole thing and not taking advantage of all the opportunities that are out there. Open your eyes, look for opportunities.
I'd like to thank our panel, Neeti Mehta, Jim Bourke, Robin Thieme, and Les Nettleton. And we were discovering all sorts of new approaches to a situation that is certainly new. How do we manage the local impact of a global disruption, this time from a US perspective? And this was a live question and answer session conducted here on the facebook.com/AICPA page. Thanks so much to everyone who submitted questions. And don't forget, you can watch this on demand on the Facebook page too. From the AICPA and CIMA, I'm Kyle Hannon. And from me and from all of our guests, we want to remind you that it all comes down to the people. Stay engaged, stay communicative, stay healthy. We're all in the same situation. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beyond Disruption, brought to you by the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants. Learn more about today's topic at aicpa-cima.com/disruption. This podcast is designed to provide illustrative information with respect to the subject matter covered and does not represent an official opinion or position of the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants or any of its subsidiaries or affiliates. It is provided with the understanding that the association, its affiliates, and subsidiaries are not engaged in rendering legal, accounting, or other professional services. If such advice or expert assistance is required, the services of a competent professional person should be sought. The association, its subsidiaries, and affiliates make no representations, warranties, or guarantees as to and assume no responsibility for the content or application of the material contained herein and expressly disclaim all liability for such damages arising out of the use of, reference to, or reliance on such material.